There is hunger everywhere.
My son has attended the program. I don't even buy data for him to learn more.
Nigerians, both old and young, have taken to the streets for a 10-day protest tagged End Bad Governance in Nigeria. The protest, which started in the early hours of August 1st, 2024, is set to last until August 10th. This is unlike anything the Nigerian government has ever seen. In the ruling party's usual way of suppressing dissenting voices, the police have unleashed unprecedented violence on the people. As of the time of filing this report, about 13 people have already been reported dead, while the police propaganda machines told the world on day one that the protesters instigated the violence that led to those killings. Facts on the ground say otherwise. So what really happened? Why is this even happening? And the most interesting question on the lips of everyone remains: where is President Bela Tinubu?
He's a journalist. He's a journalist.
Tinubu, we are sending this message to you. Do the needful.
Let's start with why Nigerians have taken to the streets. It was the first week of March 2024. My team and I had traveled to one of the northern states in Nigeria. The mission was to find out why these people were agitating and threatening to loot food trucks passing through their state. Yeah, they told me that. Of course, the obvious reason to us was hunger. But why were they hungry? This was a farming community. So why were they not on their farms working to solve their food crisis? The reasons given were insecurity. You see, farmers in the Middle Belt region of the country, usually referred to as North Central, have been turned into sitting ducks for kidnappers and bandits and Fulani herdsmen who have taken turns to kill, rape and maim the people, destroying these farming communities for over 6 to 7 years now. The last administration of Muhammadu Buhari did little to improve the security situation of these farming communities. So when the people go out to their farms, they usually meet their end. This has resulted in the farmers staying away from their farms. No one wants to be unalived by armed Fulani herders. But this is just one of the reasons. Another one is the bold declaration of Bela Tinubu during his inauguration as Nigeria's president.
The fresh subsidy is gone.
You see, after making that bold declaration, albeit with no plans on how to mitigate the effects, fuel prices shot through the roof, rising more than 300%. Nigerians thought they could cope, but in just a few months, the ripple effects began to show. Food prices soared, transportation costs more than tripled. It was like jumping from frying pan to fire. However, a few months later, Nigerians would learn that fuel subsidy was not indeed gone. According to a Reuters report, Nigeria will likely spend 5.4 trillion naira, that is $3.7 billion in 2024, on fuel subsidies. That means Tinubu would be spending 50% more than in 2023 to keep petrol prices fixed, all while borrowing an extra 6.6 trillion naira to, quote, plug gaps in the federal government's budget. This was an alarming report because oil marketers have been telling Nigerians for months that fuel pump prices have gone up because of the removal of fuel subsidy. So does that mean the country has been paying fuel subsidies all along with all this hardship? Well, hang on, there is more. A few months after his swearing in, the Tamer of Atlantic Ocean, builder of Lagos, President Bela Tinubu, who fought for Nigeria's return to democracy through many anti-government protests in the glory days of Nadeko, and then during the PDP administration. Yeah, that one. A few months after he got into office, to meet the mess created by the former president he had installed back in 2015, Tinubu decided to implement some drastic monetary policies through his new CBN governor. These policies, which were sometimes whipped out of thin air with no backing production in the economy, didn't help the naira, as the currency fell to its all-time low, now trading at about 1,600 naira to the US dollar. This again added to the hardship of Nigerians as the importation of goods became more expensive. Businesses began to close down, which in turn led to people losing their jobs and having to sit at home doing nothing but contemplating where their next meal was coming from. A meal that, by the way, is now more expensive as a result of a 40% rise in food inflation. So, when I stood there talking to these people from this poor farming community for more than 3 hours and taking 2 more days to visit the market and interact with traders as well as people on the streets, I saw anger stemming from frustration. A frustration that got to a boiling point when they started hearing news of their politicians buying new SUVs for themselves, ordering private jets and a yacht, and building a 21 billion naira mansion for themselves. This was when Nigerians decided that they would not stay silent and die from hunger and starvation while their politicians fed fat from the national budget. This was when they decided that they were going to protest against hunger and bad governance. But as is common with the greedy Nigerian politicians, they pushed back. Instead of listening to what the people's grievances were, they instead started making plans to scuttle the protests. It all started with the government donating trucks of rice to states, and then quickly rushing to pass a new minimum wage bill into law. But if you think the actions of the government were genuine, you would be shocked at what happened next. As days drew near for the planned protest, the government of President Bela began meeting with influential figures, be it religious leaders, traditional heads, celebrities, and what have you. Anyone the ruling party could use to convince Nigerians to shelve their planned protest was summoned, and they all betrayed their fellow countrymen. There is this thread on X, formerly Twitter, that was carefully curated by a great Nigerian, Renu. It shows everyone who tried to issue warnings to Nigerians about the planned protest. Some used strong language, some came with unsolicited advice, some with bigotry as expected, and some blatantly told Nigerians that the hardship they were facing was as a result of a trial from God, and that they should go and pray instead of protesting. Whatever they could say to dissuade the people from protesting, they said it, not minding if they were lies or not. At the same time, when all of this were going on, other great Nigerians dug into the not-so-distant past to unearth tweets from President Tinubu himself, as well as people in his administration, calling for protest and even a revolution. Some even called for violence on men of the Nigerian security forces, as you can see from the screenshots on the screen. A very interesting one was from this guy, a certain man called Bayo Onanuga. He is one of the many special advisors to President Bela Tinubu. Now, if you want to know the stench of hypocrisy, come closer. Here are tweets from this man back when Goodluck Jonathan was president of Nigeria. Quote, "He who sows the storm will reap the whirlwind. And so let it be for Mr. Goodluck Jonathan and his cabinet. Oh, how that has come back to bite him in the ass." This was a man who, along with his paymaster, championed a call for revolution against a democratically elected president in 2012 and 2013. According to screenshots that have since gone viral, President Tinubu called for a revolution and even instructed the police not to attack protesters, saying, quote, "Your children are involved, your lives are involved, your children's future lies here." Well, if only Tinubu could guarantee those children a future today, all of this wouldn't have happened. Instead, President Tinubu's special advisor went on a tirade against the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, lying to Nigerians that Mr. Obi was behind the planned protest. He also outlined the names of other Nigerians, both within and in the diaspora, effectively making them out to be a target for government thugs and counter-protesters. With Nigerians not backing down, despite all the threats and intimidation, the Tinubu administration unleashed traditionalists on the people. Revered traditional rulers started siding with the government against their own kinsmen. Some warned their people not to come out to avoid being victims of a traditional festival, effectively threatening to invoke the gods on protesters. Thugs were sent to marketplaces, cautioning women to warn their children against coming out. The government had resorted to threats of violence against its own people. And when all that didn't work, something dramatic happened. Now, this is something I'm ashamed of saying, but for posterity's sake, I've got to say it. You see, the Nigerian government paid people to come out and protest against people coming out to protest. I know this is difficult for you to understand right now, but yes, it happened. Here are videos to show human beings protesting against a protest. But it gets crazier. You see, the reason why these people here are protesting is because protests, according to them, is not the way forward. These people you are seeing here right now are protesting to let their fellow citizens know that protest could lead to violence, so it is not the best way to resolve differences. So the best way to communicate to others that they should not protest is by protesting. Did you get it? God, the more I think about this, the more I get confused. So you're not alone. With the government realizing that nothing was going to stop people from coming out, the Senate President of the Nigerian Senate said this.
We are not interested in regime change. Let us own this government. Those who want to protest can protest, but let us be there eating.
And that brings us to day one of the August 2024 hunger protest.
He's a journalist. He's a journalist.
Americans are meant to go to the bushes and deal with the terrorists.
So now, we are coming to make him to know that things are very hard with us.
Tinubu, we are sending this message to you. Do the needful.
According to SBM intelligence, about 16 people were killed on day one of the protest. Other sources reported higher numbers. Government-sponsored thugs were transported to the National Stadium Abuja in buses to disrupt the protest. This was after the government had reportedly obtained a court order restraining protesters from going anywhere else but the stadium. In Lagos, a politician reportedly attempted to bribe journalists to give favorable coverage to the government. In Kano, officials said that the opposition sponsored thugs to disrupt the otherwise peaceful protest. There was a large crowd in Bauchi where videos show police officers brutally attacking a cripple who had come out to protest. There was a bomb blast in Borno. Katsina saw protesters march towards the house of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Kaduna witnessed some violence, but the people were not deterred. Some anti-protesters who came out to disrupt the protest and speak in favor of the government ended up switching sides. Some lamented that the government failed to pay them the money promised to them. Some had nothing to say when the camera started rolling. In all of this, the APC propaganda had failed woefully. But this was just day one. Day two didn't see much difference from the first. Nigerians came out as planned, and in large numbers too. As they say, hunger knows no tribe or religion. This was the politicians' loss. Things were proceeding fine until the security forces, just like in the first day, started using brute force on the protesters in an effort to frustrate them and maybe send them back home. I was out there when the police shot tear gas at us. The protesters weren't doing anything to warrant that attack. I would later learn that someone was shot dead. A doctor friend of mine called my line severally to make sure I was fine. According to him, the person that was killed was shot at the place I had just left. The police were so reckless in their attacks on the protesters that they reportedly killed one of their own, as can be seen in this video from Katsina. But in all of this, the president of the country has remained silent. Nigerians are tired of suffering and smiling. There is no one alive right now who can point to a time when the country has actually worked in the interest of the people. All the protesters are asking for is better governance from their leaders, people they voted into office. But to their biggest dismay, the Nigerian government has instead chosen to deploy security forces as though the country were at war. Only this time, what they are saying indirectly is that the enemies are unarmed, peaceful protesters. This is still an ongoing development, and we are documenting everything as it happens, so history will not be lost. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode, hopefully.